This is Proxy Countdown. Welcome to the big show for the week of July 15th, 2024. Yeah, alongside my tag team partner, Matt Mascardi, I'm Damian Rallis. On today's countdown, Southwest directors treated like royalty. Southwest directors who are treated like royalty do whatever it takes to support the hand that feeds them. 2 ousted directors at Kirkland's. Nobody likes Mark Benioff's pay at Salesforce. And on the big vote, a look back at the 2024 proxy season, including some of Matt's best voting recommendations. Let's start with our trade wire, our top stories. At DuPont, the company's new CEO, Lori Koch, who has been CEO since June 1st, 2024, was appointed to the board on June 27th, 2024,
really?
Meaning that it is technically possible that the board of a large cap U.S. company can operate and survive without the presence of a meddling CEO.
Wow.
See, Matt, 26 days they managed
They did it.
without the CEO.
They did
at
it.
DuPont.
I'm very proud of them.
At LKQ, Dominic Zerone has stepped down as the CEO on June 30th, at which point he was given the title of an executive advisor in order to facilitate an orderly transition for the new CEO. So he will stay on in this new made-up role until the end of 2024 and get paid exactly as he would as the CEO. Nothing is changing. Considering Dominic earned about $12 million last year, he could have saved shareholders $6 million by onboarding the new CEO while he was still in office, like most normal people at their jobs. Something tells me that Justin Jude, who has been with LKQ since 2004, most recently as COO, could have handled a more expedient transition. Oh,
Do you think so?
whatever.
Do you think somebody who's been there for 20
handled
years
it.
could have figured it out?
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Hold on to your hats for this one. At Southwest Airlines, where the board has actually dedicated itself recently to more robust director refreshment. We've seen actually a lot of new directors at Southwest over the past few years. But we have been wondering out loud for a long time why this board is so consistently old and long tenured. Because people just seem to stick around at Southwest for way too long. Well, a filing announcement, the new appointment of a new director, Rakesh Gangwal. He was the co-founder of India's largest airline, Interglobe Aviation, and the former CEO at U.S. Airways Group, might have finally revealed the mystery. Listen to some of the ridiculous director perks at Southwest Airlines. And none of this is made up, and this is going to take a little while, so bear with me. Because this is really one of the most exciting, lucrative benefits packages I've ever seen for a director at a company. And again, answering why the directors just sort of stay at Southwest. First of all, an annual retainer consisting of $90,000 in cash, $170,000 in equity, and an additional $1,500 for each meeting in excess of regularly scheduled meetings. That's nice.
That is nice.
Eligibility for a retirement payment under the Southwest Airlines severance plan for directors. I don't know why they need this, which provides for a cash payment of $35,000 for directors who have served for at least 5 years and $75,000 for directors who have served for at least 10 years. See, they're actually getting additional cash just by sticking around longer. But wait, there's more.
Wow.
Free travel on Southwest Airlines for the director, the director's spouse, and the director's children, as well as 50 one-way flight passes annually that may be used for free travel on Southwest Airlines on an unrestricted basis, and an additional 50 one-way flight passes annually for use by qualified charitable and nonprofit organizations. And then...
Wow. Well, there's more.
Yeah, and then after they step down as director from the board, 50 one-way flight passes annually that may be used for free travel on Southwest on an unrestricted basis. For a term equal to the number of years served, right? So this is part of the magic of why you want to serve a long time. So if you're on the board for 8 years, you get 8 years of 50 passes. So that's 400 passes. If the director has served at least 10 years, a lifetime privilege of 50 one-way flight passes annually that may be used for free travel. I'm serious.
A lifetime.
You just have to hit that decade. So even if you started being director at 41 years old, you step down at 51 after 10 years, for the rest of your life, you get 50 one-way flight passes annually. On top of that, yeah, there's a little bit more. I want to just do this for the absurdity of it all. I'm sorry, but I have to. If the director has served for at least 10 years, again, this magic decade, right? This magic 10-year mark, lifetime free travel on Southwest for the director and the director's spouse. And if the director is deceased, free travel on Southwest Airlines for the director's spouse for the lifetime of the spouse.
Wow.
So, but
even
so
if
basically,
they die, the spouse
even if
can
they
fly.
die, but only if you've served as director for 10 years.
Well, so
Okay, that's the magic
let's
number.
say the most expensive flight on Southwest is about $600 round trip. That's $300 each way, and it's 51 way.
Yeah, maybe from like Boston, LA.
Yeah,
say.
Boston, LA, or Boston. I think they fly to Hawaii even, or Alaska.
Okay,
so
okay.
it's probably more for the most expensive trip. In 10 years, that's an extra $150,000 that they're handing them.
50. You're getting 25 round trips.
Yeah. So after 10 years, you would have given them $150,000 of extra value in one-way flights, right? Because that's 500 flights times $300, $150,000. But for the lifetime, to your point, if you retire at age 55 or something, and you live to 80, what are we doing? Why?
There's no reason for any of this.
Why are you doing that?
Because none of this, and again, none of this is aligned to how you actually performed as a director. You just have to be there.
I'm pretty sure that this is probably the number one reason why Elliott Management has started an activist campaign.
This is crazy.
To limit
It's absolutely
free
crazy.
one-way flights.
Yeah.
And it's also probably why they're having a really hard time scheduling flights because so many directors have been there for 10 years.
and their spouses and their children.
And their children and the extra 50 flights. All the flights are full.
It's crazy.
All the flights are full.
More on Southwest later. And finally, at Gartner, CEO and chair Eugene Hall has extended his employment agreement through the end of 2031. How about that?
Wow.
For an extension. Now, there's a really cool reason why the CEO might also want to chair the board, which decides his contract and pay, right? I mean, great reason.
Mostly, I'm impressed that we can't seem to make a carbon target to 2030, but we can make a CEO contract to 2031. I'm impressed.
Let's go over to our proxy cage matches. So you reference Elliott Management. So Elliott Management has taken about an 11% stake in Southwest Airlines over the last month or so. While we were away, Southwest Airlines adopted a shareholder rights plan, more commonly known as a poison pill. This is in response to activist Elliott Management's investment, because don't forget the Elliott Management is trying to push out CEO Bob Jordan and Chair Gary Kelly. So the poison pill will only activate if Elliott acquires at least 12.5% of the company. If that threshold is crossed, all other shareholders will be entitled to purchase one new Southwest share for every share they currently own at a 50% discount. Okay, so this provision is meant to dilute Elliott's influence and power over voting. And let's not forget that Southwest board, this very happy board that gets a lot of one-way passes to everywhere, has already backed company's leadership. They backed the CEO, and why wouldn't they, right? I mean, why would they want Elliott to have any influence over? They're there merely to support the CEO, right?
I think they're probably on the plane with Gary Kelly now on one of their free flights.
Just circling
DCA. Yeah.
And let's not forget that best practices would suggest that shareholders actually need to approve these poison pill plans, not the board. It's been for a long time in the corporate governance world, they would vote against poison pill plans that were enacted by the board. So this one was pushed through immediately, not by shareholders, but by the board.
I would say the clever part here, though, is that as soon as Elliott amassed an 11% stake, Southwest said, well, 12.5%.
You're done.
You're done there. That's enough.
Moving over to our vote results table, here are some of the highlights over the past few weeks. Proxy season is pretty much peaked, but there's a few stories. At Kirkland's, 2 directors were actually voted out. Stephen Collins and R. Wilson Orr III. They both got 53% no. And shockingly, Matt, following deliberations, the board of directors voted to accept the resignations of Collins and Orr, effective immediately. So, I mean, I hate the fact that they actually got to make a decision. Like they could have rejected the will of shareholders, but they agreed, and now they're gone. Actually, shareholder democracy at work.
I would say the fact that the board gets to deliberate at all is the real question mark.
Nonsense.
That's nonsense.
At Salesforce, again, we cover this world weekly, Matt, and you can never tell which direction these things are going to come in. Why, when, how. But the shareholders at Salesforce have decided that they don't like pay. They don't like the executive pay plan. 55% said no, which is a huge number. Despite that, the pay committee, all 3 members received at least 93% support from shareholders.
Well, I don't understand. Plan. That's not their fault.
At Snowflake, a company we covered on the Big Vote a few weeks ago, about 20% of the vote was against 2 directors, Benoit Dageville and Mark Garrett, and also a plan that shareholder proposal that you supported, Matt, for declassification from James McRitchie. It passed with 78% support. Again, we don't know why. We don't understand it, but sometimes shareholders do the right thing. And finally, at NVIDIA, another shareholder proposal, this one by John Chevedden, asking for a simple majority voting standard. It passed. 89% went against management's recommendation and passed. Again, why? Why? Do we know?
I don't have any idea. And I will say that the declassification at Snowflake was a non-binding vote. So
yes.
Curious whether or not they bind that. I wonder if they're in deliberations now.
How do you say no to a declassification at this point? I just seems silly.
I'm sure NVIDIA is going to find a way to say no to 89% of investors agreeing that they should not have a supermajority.
I mean, where are the shareholders anyway that are annually voting out directors at large cap companies? What should Snowflake be afraid of putting up its slate?
We'll get to that in a second, but the short answer is nowhere.
All right, let's move over to the Big Vote. I'm going to start with some observations. I compiled a full list of Matt's recommendations since we started this show, I think in November, actually. And you know what? It took me way too long to compile this list. And so if any of our listeners actually want to get their hands on this list, I'm happy to give it to them. I'm happy to post it somewhere. I put it in a spreadsheet. I'm actually making it a little bit prettier as we speak. So if you actually want this list, if you actually care what Matt Moscardi thinks, reach out to us. I'll send it to you.
I'll expect zero emails on that.
But I didn't really know what to do with this information. So I just decided to pick what I thought were Matt's 3 biggest wins.
Ooh,
I don't know.
I won something.
I don't even know if you won. But here are Matt's 3 biggest wins. At Abbott Laboratories, Matt's recommendation to vote against nomination committee chair John Stratton was a good one, I guess, as 26% of voters agreed. So I guess good on you.
So that means 74% disagreed.
Okay. And as a caveat, 28% voted against him in 2023.
So even less than 2023.
Yeah. So maybe this is a loss. I don't know. Just so people are clear, and again, if they want to get their hands on Matt's recommendations, Matt was concerned about Stratton's extensive links to Abbott's past. It actually was a good recommendation. So
links are insane. I'm
calling it a win.
They are
insane.
Yeah, that he hasn't been voted out yet is really shame on you, investors.
At Norfolk Southern, I think overall, Matt, you did a pretty good job at Norfolk Southern. The analysis was sort of dead on. Matt rightly called for the removal of Amy Miles, who got 64% against.
Yeah.
He also called, meaning you, Matt, you called for the election of dissident directors Bill Clyburn Jr. and Sameh Fahmy. Both of them were actually voted in by shareholders at about 63%. You also called for Allison Landry to be voted in. She just missed at 49%. 0.3%.
Yeah, who's the 0.7
And also-
on that? Where are you? What are you doing?
Yeah, I don't know. And also, I want to give partial credit to myself on this one because I remember in that show, I loudly advocated against nominating committee chair Jennifer Scanlon, and she also was voted out by shareholders.
So they listened to
there you
your
go.
recommendation there.
Yes,
yeah.
that's mine. That's
Yeah.
my win. And finally, at Disney, I'm giving this win to you, Matt, and you only, because you called this one correctly. There was a lot of noise out there, but I mean this sincerely. We nailed our analysis at Disney. Way better than any other of our competitors.
Everyone else.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but it's true.
Yeah.
It's actually true. If you look back at that show and do it, go download the show on Disney if you want to hear
us
how
be
to
correct.
use our data
Yeah.
to analyze these board elections. But at Disney, Matt, you wisely said a big no on Maria Elena Lagomasino, and you were close. 37% is actually an incredibly high number against a
It
sitting
should have been a
director.
bigger no. Should have
Yeah.
been bigger.
And you also said a big no to Nelson Peltz and Jay Rasulo, dissident directors, and they both
Those
failed
were
miserably.
easy.
I'm
Those
giving
were
full
easy.
credit to you.
Yeah,
on
I'll
that,
take
full
the credit. I'll take the credit for it all.
So those are Matt's big wins, I guess.
Yeah. Is that what we're calling a win now?
Yeah. What are your observations on the proxy season?
All right,
far,
so
Matt?
proxy season has pretty much rounded itself off, although we're getting some more results here and there.
some lingering votes.
But I've got about 6,000 votes that happened in 2024 in our data in the U.S. That I looked through. Basically, I wanted to do sort of an overall review of what happened. So look at some top and bottom performers, and then I came out actually with an investing theory,
Yeah.
of how to choose a company using people. So we'll get to that at the end. So let's start with the overall. Out of the 6,000 votes in 2024, in 2024 only, I didn't include the end of 2023. This is just
okay, this
2024.
is U.S. companies, all market sizes.
U.S.
market
companies,
cap
all
sizes.
sizes. Out of them, only 13 directors got less than 50% of the vote.
Wow. And two of them I just mentioned at Kirkland. Wow,
Well,
that's
those
incredible.
aren't in the data yet. So now it's
Okay,
15 directors.
Sure.
But that was at a total of 10 companies. So
Wow.
if you think about that, that means investors just hated 10 companies out of like 2,000 that are in our data, proving, in fact, that everyone is above average. Every company is above average. 122 got less than 75% of the vote. So that means, in the 51 to 75% range,
Right.
there's a lot more dissent. But then 675 got, which is 11% of all the directors for which we had data, got less than 90% of the votes, leaving the vast majority, 89% of directors got more than 90% for votes. In fact, the U.S. average in 2024 was 95.32%, and the median was 97.46%, which is the median's actually higher than it has been.
Yeah. Now, here's where these numbers have bothered me for a long time. Now, we were just talking about who were we just talking about this in a call? The activist investor. We were
Elliot,
just talking about this in a call. No, we were just talking. We had a phone call
Oh,
with
yes, of course. The Activist
Michael-
Investor newsletter. Great newsletter.
Yeah, Michael Levin.
Yeah.
We're just talking about this. MSCI sets the threshold of ownership for a controlling company to be 30%, right? They're effectively saying that if you have 30% of the voting power, you effectively control the company, right?
Right.
30%.
Right.
So we're waiting for a 50% threshold to vote out directors. Why? What about? I mean, looking at your numbers, there aren't even many directors who got 30% no. But why do we even need a majority if you effectively control the company with only 30% of voting power?
So you're just talking about grade inflation. Basically, you're treating it like, remember in the 2000s with Harvard and grade inflation scandal and everybody got A's? And so what you're saying is if everybody gets A's, then A minus should be failing, right? You should be out. That's
I might not be saying that, but what I am saying is that if it only takes 30% to control a company, it should only take 30% of
no votes
shareholders
to get
rid of a director.
Right.
I mean, what's the harm anyway? Is that you're going to refresh your board. You're probably going to find someone more qualified because it's probably a pretty good target in the first place. That's the reason why they're voting you out. And with our skills and expertise data and all other data we have, you can find probably somebody better anyway. What's the harm?
That's the crazy part. So when you and I have been talking about doing this, like the machinations of this for a while, but there is an opportunity to actually take some of those bottom performers that might be bottom performers at a particular company and trade them, just like you would, like a transfer season for soccer or NBA team.
Right.
Take some of the bottom performers and put them in a place where they're actually likely to be better performers. That's one possibility here. You don't have to vote them out. You just trade them. You just swap. But let's talk about.
You know what? I like this as a compromise, right? It's like we won't even kick you out of the league,
right?
We're gonna reposition you somewhere better.
We just need to put you in a position where you're more likely to be successful. That's how you frame it.
If it makes you even happier, we'll even keep you in the same market cap bands, right? So that you don't lose too much money or too many one-way passes on Southwest Airlines.
Yeah, exactly. And if you were at Southwest for 10 years anyway, you can keep those passes.
Yeah, that's right. You got it for life anyway. So you can fly to your new directorship, so you're good.
So that's your first place to go and poach some talent. But the amazing thing about the data is it actually allows you to knowledge and expertise map directors, like a board who could use a certain expert, a core expert that doesn't have one, but they're over there, right? Mm-hmm. And they're underperforming over there at a company that doesn't need that expertise. That's a perfect opportunity to like find swaps. You can swap based on performance. You can swap based on, network power, who knows who. In fact, you could make a case that, one of the complaints is boards, they need to operate as a team, and it doesn't work if culturally there's not a fit. Well, we can find where you've worked with other board members before and it's worked, but you're not on their team anymore. Swap them back, right? Like there's lots of opportunity here. In fact,
it's like the Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen theory a little bit, right? I don't know, like they seem to work well together.
Sometimes you work better with a person, right?
With a buddy, yeah.
With a buddy, yeah. But I will say, and we haven't had a proxy countdown since, for a couple of weeks. I was in London talking to board members about some of these ideas, the performance.
Nobody
metrics.
punched you.
They did not like a lot of what I had to say, but
despite the fact that the median support they're getting is 97%, they're worried about you.
One of the most interesting things, and I'm going to talk about this, is that even a 1% difference between Director A and Director B in a boardroom. If Director B got 94%, Director A got 95%, they want to know why. They really are upset by the fact that they got less than somebody else.
Well, they're vain. But does it actually affect their standing in the boardroom? Did you ask that? Like, do others look down, or their vanity wants to know why?
The others in the boardroom seem to, and this is anecdotal, and this is based on conversations that I've had, but they seem to sort of like bro hug it out, right? Like it'll be okay, it's fine, it happens, right? It's 1 year, but the directors individually are these are all high performing people in their jobs, right? And they view themselves as at the peak of their career. And when they get 1% less vote, even though it's a massive majority voting them in, they're upset.
You made a compelling case for anyone who's a shareholder, anyone who's an activist, to exercise your vote against directors because they're actually paying attention.
They are paying attention.
So maybe this will get you to the table to negotiate something if they're concerned about you voting against them.
One of the most interesting things on the other side of the table was that there were investors in that room who were complaining that they couldn't talk to directors. They didn't have access to the directors. And yet they vote for them. Yeah. And I said, I asked the question, why would you vote for somebody who won't talk to you? You're their boss, even if it's an incremental piece of being their boss. Well, that's one way to register your displeasure with your access.
The analogy we're constantly making in our company is to sports leagues, right? And the equivalent here is that if a player, their version of a director doesn't show up for a press conference, they get fined. They have to pay money.
They get not only do they get fined.
that these directors aren't talking to the investors is crazy to me. I mean, they should absolutely be fine. They should at least give like 10 of their one-way passes.
But imagine if this is more like if the GM called the player up and the player was like, I'm not talking to that guy ever.
Screening the message, screening the calls.
And hanging up every time. You'd get traded, right? Like you'd just be thrown off the team.
Right.
But let's talk about top and bottom performers by votes, okay?
Let's do it.
So it would be easy enough to say, well, here's the director who got the most votes this year and here's the director who got the least. But that's actually not that interesting because the list of least is so small that, it's almost pointless to talk about. What I wanted to do instead is actually say, well, which directors, one of the things I heard about in London was a director will make a decision that often won't come to fruition for 3 or 4 or 5 years, right? Like they're making strategic decisions with the management team about a capital expense, about paying a dividend, about all sorts of things. Many of these things take years to actually happen. So what we did, when I say we, I mean Ari the data queen here at Free Float, I asked her to pull all the directors in 2019, the class of 2019, that are still on their boards today.
Okay.
In the U.S., that's about 10,000 directors, or just under 11,000 directors. About half of U.S. directors are still on the same boards today that they were in 2019. And then I wanted to look at what their vote results table were relative to what their 5, 3, 2, 1 year total returns are. The theory is if an investor cares about returns, then that's what they care about. These are directors who were making decisions 5 years ago, and we have 5-year returns to say, did that decision actually translate to shareholder value in the market?
Okay. And look, and we know that investors do care about returns. We see it all the time at small cap companies that when the share price is failing, they get angry at directors. You see it right in the data. Right. So they do care.
They do care. And it's interesting where they care and where they don't. We have results in 2024, and this is 2024 U.S. only, for 3,000 of the 10,000 directors or so. All right, so about a third of them we actually have a result for. That's for a lot of reasons. Some are classified boards; they didn't come up for election. Some votes happened in 2023, not in 2024. But we're going to focus on that group, 3,000. We're going to start with them. Out of those 3,000, there were 152 directors who sat on boards that had negative returns for every single year.
Every measured time
5, 3, 2, 1 year periods.
Okay.
That's 5
underperformers
every single year, 152 of them. So that's about 5% of the
consistently
who had elections.
Underperforming.
Consistent underperformance. All of them underperformed their industries as well. Meaning they didn't just underperform and the whole industry stunk for those 5 years. They underperformed the average for all of their sub-industries. They just underperformed, period. The average vote for re-election for what I'm calling the negative directors was 93.72% for.
Which
in 2024.
Which is ridiculously high, but let me caveat that. You just said that the average vote in the U.S. was 95%. So this is a shade below that. And you also just said that when a director gets even 1% shift, they notice. So this is, in this context, in this world, that is a significant dip, right? I mean,
there is
because
enough.
Again, it takes very high temperatures to melt these glaciers of voters.
But let me say to the investors, if are you so worried about pissing off 152 people who have never given you a positive return in a 5-year span that you wouldn't vote against them? The vote is still overwhelmingly for them.
Part of the problem, Matt, from my perspective and our perspective as a company, is that they don't have like an easy way of identifying this and seeing the data in front of them. Maybe if they saw this right in front of them, hey, these people are consistently underperforming. Now how do you vote? Because none of the The ISS is the Glass Lewis's. They refuse to articulate these decisions these way.
So let's look at the good. Okay, so that's the
Okay.
bad. Here's the good. 984 of those 3,000 directors have had positive total returns for every one of
Okay,
those
so
periods.
consistent overperformance.
Consistent overperformance. That's actually 32% of directors who had elections this year consistently outperformed from 2019 to now.
Okay. And the stock market has been steadily going up.
So
right?
when you look at them versus their sub-industries, still 2/3 of them, 663 of them, actually outperformed their sub-industries. So these are
your top performers.
these are top performers. The
Yeah.
average vote for re-election for these positive directors was 94.8%.
So basically a 1% bump for the top performers over the
Premium is
underperformers.
worth exactly 1.08%, 1.1%. But the irony here is they still underperformed the average for all U.S. elections at around 95%. They they're just about average, right?
Okay.
So they're not exactly like outperforming on votes relative to how much they're outperforming in the market.
Right.
So even though they're getting sort of a performance premium, I'm not sure what the incentive here is to outperform.
Well, as we've seen, like so far up until now, July 18th, 2024, there's no incentive either way, right? There's no your performance at a company doesn't seem to move shareholders in any direction.
So what
right?
I did
unless you fail attendance.
Yeah, exactly. So what we're finding is the votes are actually uncorrelated to performance, meaning whatever thresholds that you're getting from a proxy advisor has nothing to do with how the company is actually performing in their tenure relative to decisions they may have made 5 years ago that should have come to fruition now, right? You're not seeing a correlation because that's not what they're doing. They're saying, did you show up to enough meetings? Are you diverse enough? Are you, vote against the pay committee for pay over the 90th percentile, or some random set of policies
that has nothing to do with the directors.
It doesn't
themselves.
actually have to do with the decision a director is making and how they perform over time,
or who they are.
I ran all these same numbers by eliminating CEOs in that cohort, family members, dual class shares. And the results were almost exactly the same. So for underperformers of their industries, it was 93.7% votes for. And for outperformers, it was 95.22%. So the premium's a little bit bigger, 1.5% instead of 1%.
I still think that premium is interesting, though. I mean, because again,
but it's there. Yes, there's a premium.
There's not a lot of there's not a lot of wiggle room in general with this data, right? So that it is. I don't know. I mean, they do vote for overperformers a bit more, right?
So they do a little bit, and you can see it in the top performers. So I got a top 6 and a bottom 6 list.
All right, go ahead.
And these are directors at their company where the company they were on the board in 2019. They're on the board now, and their votes are incredibly high. Or who are the biggest vote getters at the top company, right? So Kahina Van Dyke at Progressive Corporation, 99.8% for. She's outperformed for the last 5 years there. Harry DeSimone at Fiserv, 99.7% for. I'm going to put this short list on our website, so we just don't list people. But there's a short list here of top vote getters at these companies who have demonstrated outperformance in the same way. Here's your bottom list, all right? PayPal has underperformed. The industry has underperformed in general. But somehow Ann Sarnoff at PayPal got 98.8% for votes in 2024, despite the fact that she has added market cap value for investors of negative $1.3 billion in the last 5 years. Joseph Rigby at Dominion Energy, 98.3% for votes, negative $822 billion in value created for investors. What's shocked me about the bottom list is it includes well-known names like PayPal,
Okay.
Pfizer, Dominion, 3M, Dave Dillon at
Right.
3M, 95.7% votes for, negative 2.5 billion in value created. These are not hidden directors. These aren't directors at small cap companies that you're not voting on, you're not researching. These are the biggest companies in the United States, some of them. 3M's a massive corporation. They have underperformed persistently, and you're still voting in directors who have been there for 5-year periods who've seen all the underperformance. We're still voting for them at an above average rate.
I mean, I do wonder, like, some of the names you mentioned, like Dave Dillon at 3M, who's 72 years old. I wonder if investors had this data in front of them, maybe they would change their mind. I don't know.
Well, here are my takeaways. My takeaways are, first of all, accountability isn't really there. It's not a real thing.
Welcome to America.
The actual performance gap for a director who underperforms on total returns persistently over long periods of time is still overwhelmingly voted in. And the cost to that director, the social cost to that director, is at most 1.5% of their vote. Instead of getting 96%, they're getting 93.5%.
Which you've discovered does upset them a little bit.
It does upset them.
Days.
It's a social cost to them, but it is not a real cost. Right?
Sure.
Like, let's be real. Like,
you're still going to get the one-way vouchers from Southwest.
But I also think in doing this research and calling through it all, I have a new theory of investing I'm calling it the choosy director theory of investing.
I like it. Choosy director theory of investing.
So think of it this way. The assumption is that if there's a director who cares about how they perform, if they care about the performance of their companies, there are directors who are in a position to choose companies that they deeply believe in. They're not just taking gigs. They're professional directors choosing companies that they believe in, who they think will outperform because it both is good for them and their careers and they're making money, and it's good for shareholders. They value the outperformance, right? If you could identify a director who is choosy about taking a job, who could take any job but chooses the one that they want, you might be finding companies who are likely to outperform over longer periods of time. So I compiled the list, and it's a very short list because I wanted to find directors who have a history of outperformance, who could get any job, and they're on boards now. They were added to boards in the last 5 years. They're on these boards. They have more than 10% of the influence of these boards, meaning they have committees, they have stakes. There's situations that make them powerful inside that boardroom. Here's a couple of companies that popped and the directors why I'm looking at them. Now, get a pencil out because this is the most important thing I'm going to say. A company like Joby Aviation, where Reid Hoffman's on the board. This is one of those companies that's promising flying cars, and I believe they said something like they think they have a $9 trillion market opportunity, which is a make-believe number.
Sure.
But this is a company where you have board members who are highly qualified and are not going to be taking random chances with their name in a company. They're actually throwing weight behind the company. Companies I haven't heard of, most of these are smaller companies. Chart Industries. Linda Hardy is an outperformer, and she joined Chart Industries in 2021.
Okay.
Gen Digital, Eric Brandt, outperformer, joined in 2020. An all-star and this actually, I got excited about this as a concept. ChargePoint Holdings, which does chargers for electric vehicles. Now that Tesla's backed out of it, right?
Yeah.
I was thinking to myself, well, that's Tesla is getting subsidies for it. We are all supposed to move to Teslas. Who's going to fill the void? Bruce Chizen is on this board. Bruce Chizen has outperformed at all the companies he's been on over the last 5 years. He's an all-star in our data. He has 18% of the influence on this board. And I thought, wow, maybe that guy is choosing this company because he sees a massive market opportunity over the next 5-7 years.
Bet long on Bruce Chizen.
I'm long Chizen. Yeah, which feels weird to say. Ansys is my last one. Bob Calderoni, 12% influence there. But my point is,
Yes.
there might be actually an opportunity to not look at these companies as sets of like just market opportunities, but also who's there and who else is betting. By joining the
Right.
board, by being there, by managing the company, who's got a proven track record, there might be a investment theory there. I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah, you know what I would like to see before we wrap up? Like in sports, when an aging veteran is their stats are down, they're a drag on the team. What I would like to start seeing is an aging veteran director who consistently, year after year, is underperforming for these companies that they love, right? Deciding, based on my performance, maybe I'm a drag on this company. I'm going to step down. And I'm going to say in the filing, the reason why I'm stepping down, it's been a good long run. I've had a lot of great memories at the bagel table at this board. But my performance, as shown by providers like Free Flow Analytics, has shown that I've been underperforming. I've been distracted. I've been getting older. I'm a grandfather now. It's time for me to step down, right? I'd like to see more of that coming down.
Honestly,
the pike.
I'm actually thinking the opposite, which is the Al Horfords.
Okay.
These are aging stars who
deliver,
who
great
didn't
team players.
Get that. They never won that championship.
Yeah.
Who are looking around the league saying where
But are all stars.
They're all stars, but they're aging. They couldn't get, they never got over the hump. They never won that championship. And they're saying which team could not only use me, but is most likely to win a championship. If I can join that team, then I could finally cap out my legacy. Bruce Chizen, can you be the Al Horford of Charge Point? Can you do it?
It's Al Horford, not Horford. That's the. Anything else to say, Matt, before we wrap up?
That's it.
That's the proxy countdown for the week of July 15th, 2024. Join us next week? Yeah, I think we'll be back next week when we jump back into the alternative democracy pool, forever on the lookout for shareholder sharks, floating band-aids, and wayward directors. Yeah.